Imagine a dog, blind and weathered, waiting at the same corner every day, year after year, his heart full of hope even as time slowly slips away. He's waited for someone, anyone, to return and claim him, to give him the love he's never stopped believing in. Then one day, a voice calls out, a voice he almost forgot, but deep down, he's never truly lost. What happens next is a story of love, loss, and the power of never giving up. Will it be enough to heal both of them? Every morning, like clockwork, Benny would find himself at the same spot on the corner of Maple and Third. His eyes, once bright and full of curiosity, had faded into a clouded, milky white. He didn't mind. The world had grown darker for him over the years, but he had learned to navigate it with almost perfect precision. His sense of hearing and smell had become his compass, guiding him through the few steps he knew by heart. He had been abandoned here as a puppy, left by the side of a road that few people took the time to notice. The scent of asphalt, old newspapers, and the occasional whiff of hot dogs from the corner deli had become his familiar companions. But the one scent he always craved, the scent of his owner, had disappeared long ago, replaced by an aching emptiness in his chest. Years had passed since that fateful day when his master's footsteps stopped at the door and never returned. Benny could still remember the sound of her voice calling his name, the warmth of her touch, the feel of her hands running through his fur. It had been everything to him. And so he waited every single day. He had tried leaving the spot once, months after she had gone. He'd wandered up and down the street, his paws dragging in confusion. But something kept pulling him back. His instinct told him that if he just stayed, just waited, she would return. He'd feel the tap of her shoes, the familiar rustle of her coat, and then everything would be okay again. But no one had come. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. Still, Benny remained. The people who passed by would stop for a moment, coo at him, and often drop scraps of food near his paws. But none of them understood. None of them could hear his silent plea, his desperate cry for the one person who had once made him feel whole. Benny's fur had grown matted and dull over time. His ribs showed slightly through his weathered coat. Yet he sat unmoving at the same spot, as if time had stopped for him, as if the world outside this corner no longer existed. He wasn't lonely, though, not in the way humans might think. His loneliness had a shape, a weight, and it sat next to him, always lingering. What he had was faith, a faith that one day the familiar voice would return and call out to him, pulling him from this quiet vigil. But the years had been cruel to his heart. It had grown heavy, and Benny, though resilient, had begun to lose hope. The world around him continued to spin. The seasons changed, and the bustling streets stayed alive with voices, car engines, and the hum of the city. But Benny, he waited, blind and bound a corner where he had last felt love. And yet his faith, no matter how small, still flickered. The sun had long since set, and the cold of the evening settled into Benny's bones. The chill didn't bother him much anymore. He had grown used to the biting wind, the occasional rain, and the chill that nipped at his skin. He sat unmoving, his head slightly cocked to the side, listening to the familiar hum of the streetlights as they flickered to life. It was another night, just like the hundreds before it. A lone car passed, the rhythmic sound of its tires against the wet road, the only thing breaking the silence. The scent of the nearby bakery lingered in the air, fresh bread and cinnamon rolls. But it was a scent that didn't reach his stomach anymore. His appetite had faded years ago. All he cared about was the faintest sound of footsteps he might recognize. And then, as if the world itself was testing his resolve, a voice cut through the cold, sending a jolt of recognition through him. "Hey, boy." Benny's ears perked up at the sound. It was soft, gentle, but it held something he hadn't heard in years. Warmth. He tilted his head, sniffing the air, his old bones straining to turn toward the direction of the voice. His heart began to race. though he didn't fully understand why. Could it be? Had someone finally come for him? The voice came again, this time closer. Are you lost, little one? Benny's tail, which had long since stopped wagging, gave a tiny, involuntary thump against the cold pavement. It was barely a motion, but it felt like a spark of life within him. He couldn't see this person, not with his cloudy eyes, but his ears were working overtime, trying to catch every nuance of the voice. The tone was familiar, too familiar. You're okay. Just hang in there, okay? The voice was kind, soothing, but laced with something else, an edge of pain, of sorrow, like the speaker was holding back tears. Benny wanted to move, to rise to his feet, but his legs, stiff from years of stillness, refused to cooperate. So he sat there, his heart thundering in his chest, as the stranger approached. The footsteps were light, careful, almost hesitant. A pair of soft shoes shuffled closer, then stopped. Good boy, the voice whispered, as the person knelt down in front of him. Benny could hear the shift in the air as their breath caught, a gentle sigh escaping their lips. For a moment, everything stood still. Benny, unsure what to do with this sudden, unexpected encounter, simply let the voice wash over him. It felt safe. It felt like home. Was it the same voice? Could it be? The stranger reached out, tentative at first, as if waiting for Benny's approval. When the dog didn't pull away, they gently stroked his matted fur, sending a ripple of comfort through him. Benny's breathing slowed, the tension he had carried for so long easing slightly. I've been coming here for weeks, you know, the voice continued, almost as if speaking to itself. I didn't know if you'd be here, if you'd still be waiting, but you are. I didn't think you would remember me. The words confused Benny, but there was a distinct ache in them, an ache he understood. His head tilted slightly, and he leaned into the touch, his senses struggling to place the voice, the scent. It was familiar, yet strange. So close to something he knew. But what? The person sighed softly, brushing a stray hair from their face, and in that moment, Benny could hear the unmistakable sound of a tear hitting the pavement. His heart clenched. This person was hurting. Benny didn't know why, but he could feel their pain as surely as his own. And though the shadows of the night crept around them and the voices of the city continued their endless chatter, there was something new in the air, a glimmer of possibility, a whisper of hope that things might change. Benny felt it in his bones, in the warmth of the hand on his fur, in the way the voice seemed to reach to the fog of his memory. The next day, Benny returned to the same corner, the place where he had waited for so many years. His paws shuffled slowly as he walked, a rhythmic pattern he had perfected over time. He knew the cracks in the sidewalk, the dip in the street, and the rusted lamppost that always buzzed faintly when the wind blew. But there was something different about today. The air felt lighter, somehow, like it was holding its breath in anticipation. Benny's mind wandered back to the night before. The voice, the touch, the warmth that had swept through him. Who was she? The woman who had come to him? He knew he should have asked. But the moment had been so overwhelming that he had forgotten to question it. He had simply soaked it in, enjoying the rare sensation of being cared for again. As the day wore on, Benny found himself straining to hear that voice once more. He didn't know why it had called to him the way it did. There was a deep ache inside him now, one that told him he needed more than the simple act of waiting. He wanted to know, wanted to understand who this person was, and what she had meant by her words. I didn't think you would remember me. The words echoed in his mind, mixing with memories he couldn't quite place. The fog in his head, caused by years of solitude and blindness, began to lift just a little. He remembered someone who sent linger in the back of his mind, someone who had once called him Benny Boy, and smiled when he came running, his paws light on the soft grass. But who? Who was it? As Benny sat in the corner, his tail gently brushing the ground, a young woman approached. She walked with purpose, her face buried in her phone, oblivious to the dog sitting patiently by the side of the road. As she passed, Benny caught the faintest whiff of something familiar, something in her scent that triggered something deep inside of him. He stood up, ears twitching, following the smell. She was almost out of sight now, her footsteps quickening. But Benny wasn't sure why he moved. He wasn't used to chasing anyone. He had always waited patiently, unwavering. Yet today, there was something in him that made him want to run toward her, to close the gap that time had put between them. He took a tentative step, then another, until he was moving faster than he had in years. His body was slow, aching from years of stillness, but there was a fire in his chest, an urgency he couldn't explain. He followed her. He didn't know why or how, but his paws moved on their own, and when he rounded the corner, he saw her again. This time, she was looking down at him. "You!" she whispered, her voice trembling. Benny's heart skipped a beat. She knew him. She remembered him. But how? How could she remember? The woman crouched down in front of him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I thought you were gone," she said, her hand trembling as she reached out to stroke his fur. "I didn't think I could ever find you." Benny's tail wagged slowly. He had been found. She had found him. The memory hit him all at once, like a floodgate opening after years of being damned. The voice that had called his name, the laughter that had filled the room, the gentle touch that had soothed his fears. It was her. Her name, Mia. Her name came back to him, clear as day, like the sun breaking to the clouds after a storm. Mia, the girl who had been his whole world once upon a time. "I'm sorry," Mia whispered, her hand brushing over his matted fur. "I never wanted to leave you. I never thought I'd let you go." Benny's heart clenched. The pieces were falling into place. Mia had been the one who had left. But why? Where had she gone? She looked at him, the weight of her gaze filled with guilt and sorrow. "I was young, Benny. I didn't know how to take care of you. I had to leave. I couldn't give you the life you deserved. So I left. I thought it was for the best." Benny felt a pang of sorrow in his chest. He had waited for years, believing she would come back, that she would return to take him home. But all along, she had been out there, somewhere, carrying the burden of their separation. "I try to forget," Mia continued, her voice cracking, "but I never could. And I couldn't let you die alone on this street. I couldn't. I had to find you." Benny's heart was full, too full, as if it couldn't contain all the emotions swirling inside of him. He wanted to lick her face, to jump up and dance around her, but he was too weak for that. Instead, he sat down in front of her, his tail thumping softly against the pavement. She cried. Quietly at first, then with more force, her body trembling with the weight of the years they had lost. But Benny didn't mind. He had waited so long for this moment, and now that it was finally here, he could only feel the relief of it all, of being remembered, of being wanted. Mia was here, and he was no longer alone. For days, Benny and Mia spent time together. It wasn't the reunion Benny had dreamed of in his sleep, but it was better than the long years of silence. Every morning, Mia would visit him at the corner where he had waited. At first, she would simply sit beside him, her hand resting lightly on his back as they watched the world go by. Neither of them spoke much. There was no need for words. The bond between them was slowly, cautiously, being rebuilt. The first day Mia took Benny home was the hardest. She could feel the weight of every moment they had lost as she led him down the familiar path that once led to their house. Benny, though frail and tired, walked with a purpose, as though the house wasn't just a place where he lived. It was a place where his heart had always belonged. When they reached the front door, Benny hesitated for only a moment. He sniffed at the wood, his nose brushing against the familiar scent of the porch, the scent of her. And then, without another thought, he stepped over the threshold, his paws feeling the cool tile of the entryway beneath him, his head lifted slightly, ears perking up, as if he were trying to gather every detail of this moment. His home, his heart. Mia smiled through her tears, watching Benny move through the house with a slow but sure confidence. It was as though, in his quiet, unspoken way, he knew that this place had always been his. "You remember it," she said, though she didn't expect an answer. "I never should have left you." But Benny wasn't concerned with blame. He had only one thought in his head. She's here. That was enough. The first few weeks back were filled with awkward silences, punctuated only by the sounds of Benny's low, contented sighs as he lay by the window, watching the neighborhood go by. Mia, too, seemed to drift in and out of her thoughts. She would often catch herself staring at Benny as though searching for something in his eyes, something that would explain why they had ended up here, why time had taken them so far apart only to bring them back together. She found herself apologizing to him, over and over again. "I should have never let you go. I'm sorry, Benny. I'm sorry." But Benny never needed an apology. He only needed her presence. And he gave her the only gift he could, his unwavering companionship. As time passed, Mia began to take Benny on short walks around the neighborhood. At first, he would stop often, his legs shaky from years of stillness, but with each passing day, he grew stronger. His eyes, though still cloudy, seemed to gleam a little brighter. The air tasted sweeter, the ground softer beneath his paws. He could still remember where they had gone together when he was young. The park with the tall trees, the patch of grass where they would run and play. One afternoon, as they walked down a familiar path, Benny stopped in front of the old oak tree that had always been their meeting place. The tree still stood, sturdy and tall, with its thick branches casting shadows on the ground. Mia stopped beside him, running her hand through his fur. "This was your favorite spot," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "I never thought I'd be able to bring you back here." Benny sat down, his tail swishing in the grass as he let out a contented sigh. This was what he had been waiting for. Not just a place, not just the familiar sights and smells, but the feeling, the peace that came with knowing he was no longer waiting. He had been found. He was home. Mia looked at him, a smile breaking through her tears. "I don't know how to make up for all the years I missed, but I'll spend every day trying." And Benny, ever patient, ever loyal, simply wagged his tail. There was no need for more. He had waited for so long, and now there was nothing left to wait for. She was here. He was home. Over time, the scars of the past began to fade. Benny's strength returned with each passing day, and Mia's guilt, while still present, became quieter. They had learned to forgive. They had learned to heal together. As the seasons changed and the years passed, Benny grew older, his steps slower, but his bond with Mia never wavered. They shared quiet mornings, lazy afternoons, and warm evenings spent watching the sunset. Benny no longer sat by the corner, waiting for something that might never come. Instead, he walked with Mia through life, side by side. And one winter morning, when the sky was heavy with snow and the world was still, Benny lay peacefully by the fireplace, his head resting on Mia's lap. He had given everything he had, and in return, Mia had given him the only thing he ever truly needed, her love. His tail, which had once stopped wagging in despair, now thumped softly in contentment, the rhythm of their hearts in perfect harmony. They had found each other, and nothing else mattered. The years had been kind to Benny and Mia. Time, which had once felt like an enemy, had transformed into a gentle companion. Benny, though no longer the lively pup who had bounded through the grass, was content. His graying fur and slower movements were a testament to the years they had shared together, the years they had reclaimed. Mia, too, had changed. The woman who once walked with uncertainty now moved with a quiet strength. The guilt she had carried for so long had softened, replaced by a deeper understanding of the bond she shared with Benny. There were days when they both would sit in the living room, side by side, as the world outside continued to rush by, and in those moments, they both understood what it meant to be home. Benny had taught her that love wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. It was about showing up day after day, despite the mistakes, despite the years lost. It was about being there in the small moments. Mia had spent so many years thinking she owed Benny something she could never give him, a perfect life. But what Benny needed most, what he had always needed, was for her to simply be by his side. One quiet evening, as the first chill of winter filled the air, Mia sat beside Benny on the couch. His head was nestled in her lap, his breathing soft, steady. The fire crackled gently in the hearth, casting a warm glow across the room. Mia stroked his fur slowly, her fingers brushing to the silver strands, and for a long time she simply watched him, not with sadness, but with deep gratitude. "Thank you, Benny," she whispered. "Thank you for waiting for me." Benny stirred slightly, his tail giving a small, weak thump against the floor. He didn't need to say anything. His presence was enough. His love had always been enough. As the days turned to weeks, Mia noticed Benny growing weaker. His steps were slower, his breathing more labored. But even in those final moments, he never left her side. He would curl up beside her on the couch, his head resting against her feet, as if he knew that his time was coming and all he needed was to be with her. One morning, as the sun rose and bathed the room in a soft golden light, Benny struggled to lift his head. Mia was sitting next to him, as always, her hand gently caressing his fur. She could see the quiet resignation in his eyes, the peace that came with knowing he fulfilled his purpose. He had waited, he had loved, he had found his way home. "It's okay, Benny," Mia said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't have to wait anymore." Benny's eyes closed slowly, as if he were finally able to rest. He had waited for so long, and now, in the warmth of Mia's presence, he could let go. His tail gave one last gentle thump, a soft goodbye, before it stilled. Mia sat there for a long time, her hand on his fur, tears slipping down her cheeks. It was a sorrow she knew would never truly fade, but there was no regret in her heart. Benny had taught her the most important lesson of all, the lesson of unconditional love. That love didn't come with promises of forever. It came in moments. It came in quiet companionship, in the soft brushing of fur, in the warmth of another's presence. As she looked at Benny one last time, Mia whispered through her tears, "You waited for me. Now it's my turn to wait for you in my heart." And so Benny passed, quietly, peacefully, knowing he fulfilled his purpose. He had waited at the same spot for so many years, but in the end, he had found his way home. Mia had kept a small piece of him with her, always. She hung a photograph of him by the door, the one where he had first sat at the corner, waiting patiently. It was a reminder of everything they had shared, everything they had overcome together. And every time she passed it, she would smile, remembering that Benny had not only found his way home, but had brought her home as well. Though Benny was no longer physically by her side, Mia knew that his love would never fade. It lived on in the quiet moments, in the memories of their years together, in the corners of her heart. And she knew without a doubt that if she ever needed him again, she would find him there, waiting just as he always had. If Benny's story moved you, leave a red heart in the comments and share this with someone who believes in the power of love and second chances. Subscribe for more heartwarming tales of loyalty and hope, only on Emotive Animal Whisper.